Mr. Comey, I really appreciate you coming today. You didn't have to do this. You chose to do it, and I want to thank you. Mr. Comey, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, yeah. So I want to thank you for coming, and we'll wrap this up. Is it fair to say that knowing what we know now, Crossfire Hurricane was not done by the book?
No, I don't think that's fair to say.
Okay. That is fair to say. It was not done by the book, right?
No, I'm disagreeing with you. My answer,
Okay.
you asked me at the beginning, I think in the main it was done.
Well, God help us all, my friend, if this is by the book. God help the United States of America if this was done by the book, because it was such an egregious violation of fairness, altering exculpatory information, failing to tell the court the unreliability of information before the court that was outcome determined at the beginning, a warrant against American citizen. If this is by the book, we need to rewrite the book, and I promise you we will. Thank you very, very much for coming, and thank you. Now, what will we be doing next? This committee will be going down the ladder of who signed the warrant application to get a FISA warrant against Carter Page. We've had Rosenstein, who is the acting attorney general, Sally Yates, who is the acting attorney general for the number 2 at DOJ when she was in charge. Both say, I would not have signed the warrant application if I knew then what I know now regarding Mr. Carter Page. Now we have the FBI director who came into the hearing today and said that 3 times he signed the application against Carter Page, he would not have signed it knowing what he knows now, knowing then what he knows now. So where are we headed? McCabe is next. He was the number 2 at the FBI. What am I worried about to the public? I'm worried that we're going to blame this on some low-level people. Somebody has got to be blamed for withholding exculpatory information from a court that would have saved an American citizen a lot of grief. Somebody's got to be blamed by using a document prepared by a foreign agent on the payroll of the Democratic Party who hired a Russian agent to create a document called the dossier that was full of falsehoods that led to the obtaining of a warrant against a member of the opposition party's campaign team. Somebody has to pay that price, because if they don't, we will keep doing this again. If it can happen to a Republican, it can happen to a Democrat. So what do I see here? Everybody at the top saying, not me. How is it possible that the director of the FBI, in one of the most important cases in the history of the FBI, was not made aware of the fact that the CIA called the dossier, the critical document to get a warrant against Carter Page, internet rumor? How is it possible that he did not know that the primary subsource was a single individual suspected by the FBI of being a Russian agent? How is it possible he wasn't informed by people in the FBI after 2 interviews in January and March of the Russian subsource, the Russian agent, that the dossier was bar talk, hearsay, you need to take it with a grain of salt, that none of that made it into the next warrant application in April, none of that made it to the top of the FBI? How is it possible something this important to the country that it's not remotely possible to me that the case falls apart and nobody tells anybody at the top? So to those who found this out, that interviewed the subsource, to those who were made aware that the subsource was a potential Russian agent, they want to hang you with this. If you didn't tell the court, then you're in trouble. If you didn't inform your superiors, you're in trouble, because there's a duty of candor to the court. So those of you who knew that the dossier wasn't reliable, was internet rumor, who had information that the subsource disavowed the reliability of the document, and you didn't tell anybody about it, you need to be fired or you're subject to going to jail. If you did tell somebody, then you've done your job. But here's where we're headed, apparently. And one of the most corrupt investigations in modern history involving the nominee of the Republican Party, where the FBI used a document prepared by a foreign agent, Christopher Steele, who hired a Russian spy to create a document to get a warrant against an American citizen about activities in Russia that were Russian disinformation, at least in part, that we end this whole drama with saying, these things just happen. Nobody at the top really needs to be held accountable other than, well, yes, my fault intellectually. Somebody needs to be fired or go to jail. Mr. Kleinsmith is pleading guilty to altering a document that it was exculpatory to Mr. Page. Without the dossier, there would be no warrant against Carter Page because all the Russian contacts could be explained if you understood Mr. Page had been working with the CIA, something the FBI knew and failed to tell the court. He went through hell because of the dossier. Not one person has been prosecuted for colluding with the Russians in the Trump world. Why does the Radcliffe revelations matter? The director of the FBI was informed by the intelligence community in September of 2016 that there was a plot being cooked up by the Clinton campaign to accuse Trump of being involved with the Russians to distract from her email server problem. And the FBI director doesn't remember that interaction. Here's the question. Do you think if this information involved Trump, they would have done something about it? I've looked in the file. I can't find any evidence they took it serious. It doesn't matter if it's reliable or not. The question is, did the FBI pursue evidence against the Clinton campaign with the same vigor they did the Trump campaign? Can you imagine what the media would be saying today if this revelation were about Trump? Can you imagine how breathless it would be if the FBI just ignored it? Can you imagine how this would be betraying on the newspapers and TV networks of this country if the Republican Party had hired Christopher Steele, who hired a Russian agent, to investigate the Clinton campaign, to get a dossier on Clinton, accusing her of horrible things that were all Russian disinformation, hearsay, innuendo. To the American media, you gave Mueller a lot of coverage. I supported the Mueller investigation because I think it was important that we run these allegations down. Where there's accusations about the integrity of our elections, about the role of Russia, we should all be concerned. But now that we know that the Carter Page fiasco was an effort by a political party to create a document to be used against an American citizen weaponizing political research, nobody seems to care. My colleagues talked about everything but the issue before us. I care. I supported legislation protecting Mueller from being fired. Why? Because I cared. I agree with the following. If the Democrats were in charge, we wouldn't be having this hearing. The Horowitz report, 17 violations of protocol and policy regarding the Carter Page warrant application. Thank God for Mr. Horowitz. We have found more, even more stunning violations. The House Judiciary Committee has declared war on the Trump administration every way you can, including impeaching him, but they have yet to hold a hearing with Mr. Horowitz. This committee has had hearings about Russia involvement in our election, about their methods and their means. We called Sally Yates and Clapper to tell us about their concerns about Flynn at a time when people didn't know. So I want to end with this about the Flynn matter. It is not normal, ladies and gentlemen, that the agent involved investigating a case, Mr. Barnett, felt like that there was no crime and the man gets prosecuted anyway. It's not normal for the agent in charge of investigating a case to believe that the organization was out to get a particular individual, in this case, Trump. This is not normal. The Flynn case is not normal. The people in the field wanted to drop it. They kept pushing it. They manufactured a crime against General Flynn. He was not colluding with the Russians. He had every reason in the world to be talking to Mr. Kislyak, the ambassador to Russia, because he was going to be the incoming national security advisor. It is not normal that the FBI takes a politically contrived document from a Russian agent paid for by the Democratic Party and use it against an American citizen. That is not normal. Somebody needs to be held accountable for this. Not only is it not normal, it is incredibly dangerous. So what will we do in this committee? We will keep moving forward. I'm going to call everybody who signed the warrant application and ask them, if you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application against Carter Page? And oh, by the way, how is it possible that the people in charge seemed to know nothing about egregious abuses in one of the most important cases in the history of the FBI? Stay tuned.